we are very excited. We move on from the conversation on the network to move to the conversation associated with cloud. And to take this conversation further, I'm delighted to invite Mohamed Tanana, Mohamed, CTO with F5 in Asia. Welcome, Mohamed. Over to you.
Thanks, Manoj. Appreciate this. So thanks, everyone, for joining us for the next panel session. I think I'm honored to have the next two panelists on the channel, Nathan Bell from M1 and Rajeev Singhal from Reliance Geo. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Very good afternoon.
I was just saying, right, but Rajeev, it's probably still morning for you, right?
Yeah.
I just want to maybe start off maybe a quick introduction, Nathan and Rajeev, just to introduce yourselves, what you do, rather than me calling that out.
For sure. So myself, Rajeev Singhal, I'm part of Reliance Geo. I work as a Senior Vice President for IT department, and I take care of OSS BSS implementation for various line of business, which is like 4G mobility customer, fixed line customers, or maybe enterprise customer. So all line of business, I'm responsible for OSS BSS implementation, and going forward, definitely for 5G also. So it's like almost 10 years now with Reliance Geo, and before that, I was part of Capgemini, Tech Mahindra, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Excellent. And Nathan.
Cool. So Nathan Bell, I run the digital office at M1, which incorporates IT, design, product owners, data, and our transformation program.
Excellent. Well, today's obviously topic it's a very big topic. It's we want to talk about your cloud strategies. It's a big topic, I think, because the cloud is becoming to run everything that we have around us, right? And obviously, you're in the thick of it, and you're working towards picking the right strategies. You probably have started many years back, and maybe transforming that strategy. And you're looking maybe we'll probably go in and discuss the way you're partnering with the hyperscalers and how you differentiate yourselves and obviously differentiating and making money and keeping the business up and running is very important. And we'll probably talk about also, if we got time, how far did you distribute the cloud? How far do you go to the edge? Which is, I think we've heard this morning, it seems to be a very important topic. So maybe I'll start with the first question. Again, you can elect yourself if you wanted to answer it. The first question is really, what is your overall cloud strategy from an internal capabilities as well as for your customer? Maybe start with Nathan.
Mohamed, I think you might have to try that question again, mate. You had us all in suspense.
Okay, no problems. What is your overall cloud strategy, both from an internal capabilities as well as from your customers?
Go for it, Rajeev.
Sure. So Mohamed and Nathan. So in Reliance, we are very clear that from an internal capability point of view, all our OSS BSS applications, we are migrating on cloud. And when we are saying cloud, it's not only infrastructure. We are talking about the latest and the modern technology stack, whether it includes open source or microservices. So the entire focus, at least in our systems team, is to migrate all the applications which used to be monolithic maybe a couple of years back. And today also some of the applications are in a monolithic stage. But we have a clear vision and target to move to cloud as soon as we can. And I think as on today, more than 50% of the system, they are already on the cloud, and they are modernized to a microservice-based architecture. And on a similar line, the focus is on move to open source as much as we can. That's the strategic direction we are taking right now, and we are moving towards it. But very clear direction, very clear focus on migrating to cloud this way or that way.
Thank you. Nathan.
So for Sure, mate. So for M1, our digital platform, which we've established, is 95% in the cloud. Our approach is a little bit different. Rather than migrating legacy to the cloud, we built a brand new digital house in the public cloud environment. I think it's a bit unique. I know it's where a lot of telcos are trying to get to, but it's probably still early days for a lot of people on that journey. But nonetheless, we're there. A bit similar to Rajeev, Geo, we've actually driven very much a microservices strategy, but ours is very much a SaaS model. So we've gone for a best of suite architecture, if you will, which is giving us a lot of flexibility. But our goal is actually to become self-sufficient. So we've been training up all of our teams to be able to manage and continue to do software development on those applications, so that as we keep making the evolution from being a telco to a digital business that provides telco services, we'll be able to keep iterating on a rapid basis. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey the past 3 years, particularly during COVID, realizing those outcomes, but that's our current state. As it relates to our customers, I think we're very keen to sort of help them follow our similar path of getting into the cloud, but we recognize that our choices don't always reflect our customers' choices. So we work with very much a hybrid cloud approach for our customers. So while the methodology and the tools we use are consistent, the options that our customers have in terms of what systems or what cloud platforms they want to use is entirely up to them. And we help them with the flexibility of being able to migrate workloads between different environments, between different cloud infrastructure platforms, depending on their needs. So yeah, hopefully by us setting the benchmark of moving holistically into the cloud, it gives our customers confidence that we can help them do the same.
Oh, that's excellent. So I noticed that there's you decided to in part partner with the hyperscalers. How far down the track do you take that? Do you expand? Are you planning to put everything on the hyperscale, or you're trying to maybe move into, like you said, hybrid, or maybe eventually, build
Did we
your
lose him
own?
again, Rajeev?
Is it me?
I'm glad
or...
this isn't the network session. If this was the network session, we'd be in big trouble. But I think Mohamed was asking in terms of how far down the path do we go with the hyperscalers? Was that your question, Mohamed?
Yes.
Excellent. So there's always a conversation of do you compete? Do you get served by? Do you find some sort of model in between, right? So I think for us, we've acknowledged the fact that we're never going to have the cloud skills at scale that partners like hyperscalers will. At the same time, we want to make sure we always have diversity of what we can use from our hyperscalers, so that we're never sort of betting on one horse, if you will. So that's been an incredibly important part to our strategy. But also working with our customers, we provide private cloud solutions, because in some aspects we have clients who have very sensitive data and are quite concerned in how it's going to work, or where there are edge compute requirements relating to large facilities or secure environments that they want to be able to have support on. So we offer a degree of flexibility on that, but for our internal strategy, it is very much in partnership with the hyperscalers, but giving us the flexibility and not being tied down to one.
Excellent. Rajeev?
I think, so I think we have the similar strategy as Nathan has described. We are also working with the various hyperscalers, and we are developing our own private cloud, but in association with the hyperscalers. Of course, it's not like a pure private cloud, but we are working with various hyperscalers to create our own private cloud, and definitely we are using their public cloud also. So it's a multi-pronged strategy is what we are adopting. As definitely, it's not possible for telco to compete with the hyperscalers for sure, and as we all understand that it's very difficult to acquire skill set in the market. I mean, cloud specific, or I mean, for that matter, any skills which is related to cloud or microservices or open source, it's almost impossible to acquire and retain, right? That's the challenge as an industry we are facing. So the way forward is collaborate and go together, and that's the strategy we are taking, and that's how we are moving.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
it's the same strategy.
Yeah. We heard this morning a lot of people are having this having challenges with finding talent to build their own private clouds,
Yes.
or in general having talents. You mentioned moving from monolithic to microservices. How important is that to the cloud journey?
This is, as on today, if you ask, this is the most critical initiative we are working on from a systems point of view, from an IT point of view. Because, I mean, 5 years back, if you see, most of the systems were monolithic. And whenever you want to move a code from one environment to another or deploy anything in production, it becomes a mammoth task because everything is kind of intermingled. The way I see is release management or code movement. It was a big challenge. The only way to overcome that problem is get into a microservices based architecture rather than a traditional monolith based architecture. So this is the most critical initiative right now, and definitely the entire organization is focused towards moving towards microservices based organization. And as output of that, we are developing many of in-house systems. We are building in-house skills, and we are ensuring that wherever possible, we have an in-house capability to migrate to that direction.
And Nathan, do you see the same with?
Totally. And actually, to your earlier point that was discussed in terms of access to talent, we've actually prioritized talent that we're trying to bring on board to be able to develop and manage microservices, to be frank. So given that I can sort of leverage resources from across the globe to work on some of our SaaS type technologies, but the microservices, act as the glue between all of our systems. And therefore, that's the critical aspect. I mean, we're trying to get to the point where we're able to do releases every single day. And if you're not owning how all of these elements are connecting together and knowing how you can drive everything from integrated development to testing to production in a rapid and automated way, the smarts reside in how those microservices are being configured. So yeah, that for us has been an absolute priority from a talent, from a architecture perspective, and how the systems have worked together.
Excellent. Moving on with that question, if vendors are not keen on moving towards modifying their code or software from monolithic to microservices, I think Rajeev, you mentioned open source. I'm not sure, Nathan, if you've got the same viewpoint as well on this, but what are the options in that case where the vendor refuses to move from a monolithic approach? Hopefully you've got my points.
The last part when you said open source onwards, but I think the part before that we missed. Sorry, mate.
That's okay. I think there's an issue between you and me, but I think Rajeev can hear me. But the question was, if you're obviously using a lot of vendor software today, and majority of the vendor software could be monolithic in nature, and for you to leverage the cloud more effectively and more optimized, you need to move to, I guess, what you're saying is you utilize microservices.
Rajeev, can you hear him?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Well, why don't you answer the question, and then I'll follow on.
Yeah, for sure. So Mohamed, I think most of the vendors, at least which we are working with, and if you see that way, we have a benefit because Geo is like maybe a 7-year-old organization. So most of the vendors which we are working with, they also have a similar vision and direction where they are moving towards from monolithic to microservice based or a SOA based architecture. And I think 80% of the vendors are aligned with the strategy which we have.
Yeah.
But if there is a vendor which is still they are laggard or the product is like kind of end of life and they are not supporting microservices, then we are trying to go into in-house open source based development rather than going with another vendor. That's the kind of a strategy right now we are adopting. But as I said, that most of vendors are, I think, in market also, they also realize that there is no way they can remain monolith, right? So they have to move to microservices. They are aligning to that strategy.
Excellent. Nathan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we've been driving very much towards the architecture as recommended by TM Forum, and driving a lot of our software partners to adhere to that framework as well. And doing so, it's actually driving, I would say, the positive conversation on microservices. And because they're recognizing that the frameworks like TM Forum are becoming increasingly regarded as the playbook, if you will, in the journey to go digital for telcos. they're all very keen to make sure that they can demonstrate that. So I find that's a massively helpful tool in being able to guide some of those conversations, and then if necessary influence some of those conversations. But again, touch wood, but to date, all of our software partners we work with have been incredibly flexible in the way that we want to be able to set things up. And so everything that we've been establishing is based on microservices. So I haven't, again, I'd say Rajeev's point, there might be instances in the future where we've got to go and develop things ourselves, but to date, we haven't had that issue.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that, Nathan.
But the good part, I think, Nathan and Mohamed, is because of this change in the thought process where vendor is also thinking towards microservices, everybody is trying to adhere with the TMF and ETOM standard. So the passion towards adhering to the standard has increased significantly now. In last 2 years, I have seen a lot of focus in adhering all the standards, whether it is a ODI or it's a on app or a TMF. But all the platforms and processes are, at least we are trying to align with some of the standards necessarily. So that way there is a standardization across industry and we move together. And that's the change which I have seen. Like maybe 5 years back, we were not so much keen in adhering to those standards, but now the focus is go and you have to. There is no other way. You have to align with the standards. That's the only way you can move forward, right?
Yeah, that's good. Like in some ways, a lot of applications have an easy path to moving towards a microservices platform. However, on the networking functions, where you have higher bandwidth requirement, it's a lot tougher to actually make that into a microservice. I know from experience, we spent at least 18 months working to microservice our functions, which are working the core of the 4G, 5G networks. But it's good to hear from your side that majority of vendors and a majority of your software is on that path. Moving to the edge, having all of us having used the cloud centrally is good. And from the previous session, we heard that it's all about customer experience and getting that application close to the customer I guess, improves that customer experience because the latency is much lower. What's your view on distributing the cloud to the edge, getting close to the edge? I know there's between the two different countries, India is fairly large, which makes a lot of sense. Singapore is a little smaller, so maybe I have two different answers from you. Maybe Rajeev, start first.
Yeah, so definitely we are moving our edge computing on cloud. But if you really see when I'm saying I'm talking from a system point of view, still I see that most of the systems are central based. I mean, there are certain applications which have edge based computing, but if you see the most of the systems, they are still decentralized maybe to an extent, but I won't call that as a edge. It is still either centralized versus decentralized is the thing, rather than calling that as an edge. But when it comes to enterprise customer, definitely we are moving towards SD-WAN technology, so that the entire compute is moving on cloud, and we are going in that direction from an enterprise customer point of view. But that's what I see, and that's what I feel. Maybe Nathan can add.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I think Singapore's a bit unique. I mean, you never get lost in Singapore. You just keep turning left. So when you've got something of this size, the whole point of edge compute is going to have some very specific use cases. So I think for us, it's more things that are security related. So for example, we're looking at some shipping projects where we will do some edge compute activities because they need to be 100% secure and limited to those folks that are working in that space. But from a core platform perspective, everything will just sit in the central cloud. I mean, every connection in Singapore is measured in milliseconds. It's never a case where you're waiting for something to load up on your page, and there is a very low tolerance for customers if things are taking seconds to load, because they'll just turn off and go and do something else. So I think the edge compute here is a bit of a different setup, I would say, than most markets, but it's just a geography question. But like I said, whether it's security or specific use cases that they're trying to isolate, then edge compute will have a role, but nothing beyond that I can see.
Yeah, so it's more like, as I said, it's more like a decentralized strategy rather than edge. So like we have many clouds, we have many data centers across India, and let's say if I take example of billing system, many of the billing component which is online reading system is very close to a PCRF maybe. Yeah, it's aligned to the network topology. But again, I won't call that as an edge computing. I'll call that as a decentralized deployment rather than a centralized deployment.
Great, thank you. Let's move on. How do you add value to enterprise customers today? You as providers of mostly connectivity type of services, how can you leverage the cloud to provide more enterprise-based services? Like, what is your view on that, and what are you planning to do in the next maybe 1, 2, 3 years from now?
I'll go first, otherwise Rajeev, because I actually heard the question that time. So my apologies for previous issues, Mo. So look, I think for us there's three angles to this. The first one is this concept I have, or that we increasingly have as M1, is in terms of being digital Sherpas. Everybody's trying to go into the cloud. Everyone's trying to virtualize their workloads, move to more elastic business models that they're trying to drive and realize. The challenge is there's a continuous degree of fear in terms of what if we get it wrong, or what's the security risk, or what are the best practices, and all those sorts of things. So I truly believe with everything that we have done as M1, it's sort of setting ourselves as a bit of a beacon to be able to guide others on that similar journey and make sure that they don't fall down the same pothole. So I think that's something that the telco industry, as it drives that with a degree of necessity in terms of where the whole technology and platforms that we're using, I think there's a massive opportunity on that front. The second area, I think, is in terms of data analytics. In my experience, the majority of companies don't understand how they can actually drive value from analytics. And I think if it's one thing, while telcos are still getting better at it, they are quite far ahead, particularly those that are moving to software-enabled platforms, in terms of looking at how do they quantify that data and how do they monetize that data. And it might not be in the traditional sense of, oh, what ad do I push out, but how do I drive greater relevance to those customers? And businesses are still trying to sort of unpack that and figure that out. So I think that's a second area. And the third area, I think, is actually being able to understand what software elements should they be considering as part of their digital future of what they want to be able to go and become. There's the traditional telco services of security, unified communications, cloud infra, connectivity. But as you start to move beyond that, how are you empowering your workforce to operate remotely based on what we've done ourselves? Or how are you enabling partners to be able to work together to deliver integrated outcomes? So that's what I see, and that's more so based on us doing that from a position of experience rather than just being able to say, hey, we're a telco, so we can do it. And I think that offers us a lot of credibility. But yeah, those are the sorts of areas that we're looking at as M1.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to enterprise customer, I think we should divide the customer in two categories. One is a small medium SMB customer, which is small medium business, and one is a big customer. So I think there will be two different strategy which will work with the two different segments. And when I'm saying so, first thing, I mean, in Reliance, we don't want to become a connectivity provider. Our focus is on becoming a solution provider, and that's where we are working on, and that's how we are trying to bundle the things for a different segment. Like for SMB, we want to give, like, if there is a coaching institute, let's take an example, then we are trying to create a bundle which creates a connectivity, not only connectivity, but connectivity plus a software which will enable online classes and maybe a couple of Microsoft licenses and some piece of a cloud desktop. Now, so instead of creating one thing which is like giving connectivity separately or giving a cloud separately, I don't think that will work in this segment. So you have to create a bundle, and that's where we are at least trying to figure out that create a bundle which is specific, which is going to provide a complete solution to SMB rather than giving a point solution. And that's the big advantage we as a telco have, right? We are in a unique position to do and create that bundling, because I don't think anybody will just take a software maybe. If you have to give a complete solution, then you are in a better position to give a managed services and give a better SLA compared to any of the individual provider. That's where I think that's the one part of the strategy where we are focusing on creating solution rather than creating a independent component. And when it comes to a big enterprise solution, what we are trying to do is we are trying to enable CIOs more rather than creating a more dependency on us. So that's where we are like we are going towards SD-WAN. We are providing, if they want to take a cloud from us, we are providing cloud. But we are trying to ensure that they are, if they want to, we are enabling them also. Obviously, we are in a managed services space area as well, but we are working both the strategy. So that's where I think we as a telco, we are in a unique position to create those kind of solutions, which independent a cloud provider or maybe a SaaS provider may not able to create that kind of bundle more effectively.
Great, thank you. Nathan, did you want to add anything to that, or?
No. I think I agree with everything Rajeev's saying. Makes perfect sense.
Great, thank you. Going forward further in the future, as you move, basically, you become very important at the edge, right? In terms of rolling out services and partnering with the hyperscalers. Being able to process things in real time. Nathan, you mentioned analytics, and potentially, there's more use cases that need to leverage, high compute, for example, GPUs, NPUs, etc. Do you guys see how you can leverage that type of technologies in the future, or are you using it today? Maybe Rajeev?
Sorry, man. Can you repeat the question, because I couldn't get the last part.
The question was, as you start to put on workloads on the cloud platforms that you have, some workloads require a lot of compute processing, like analytics, or doing IoT processing, a lot of traffic from cars, etc. Requires GPU or NPUs to be put inside the cloud. I know the hyperscalers have technology and products today that they offer that. Are you guys have any plans to roll out services, or are you leveraging any of that technology today?
We have started leveraging those technology in which we are like in case of IoT. If you really see, we have to do the data processing in real time. So I mean, there is no way we can even afford a delay of a couple of milliseconds, right?
Yeah.
In that case, the only way we can do it is using hyperscalers and using the latest technology which provides fastest processing. So all those latest technology we are using, and not necessarily we are using everywhere, but definitely where we cannot tolerate any latency or any delay in those area, and specifically I told you example of IoT. That's where we are going with the latest technology with the super fast compute.
Thank you, Rajeev. And Nathan?
I was going to say, I agree with that. I think the other nuance is IoT has historically been about being able to collect data, but I think this is probably somewhere where edge compute will come more into play, is to actually be able to go and act on data in near real time, or as close to real time as possible. So while the analytics piece, I think, can still be done centrally, again, especially in places like Singapore, the ability to go and act on what data is being told, and that could be from a safety perspective, a security perspective, you name it, that has to be near real time. And particularly in some of the projects we're working on, as it relates to ports, shipping, national security, how do you actually drive some of those outcomes and confidence? But I think where I've been really excited is, and this comes back to the power of partnership again, we sort of set the objectives together with our hyperscalers, ourselves, and whatever software partner we might be working with, and say, hey, this is where we need to get to. Now let's figure out how we get to that particular outcome. And I think that's exciting in terms of, when you set the benchmark high. I always find with software engineers in particular, they're excited. They're like, cool, let's go and solve the problem. Rather than if everyone's sort of saying, well, this is what's available off the shelf, we'll just take it. So I think it's just a mindset thing as well. You've got to, confront the challenge and empower the people to sort of figure out what they can do.
Great, thank you, Nathan. I think there's a final question here that came from the audience for you, Nathan. If that's okay with you, what has been some of the biggest lessons as a Chief Digital Officer for M1?
Number one, don't try and transform during a pandemic. And just a bit of a side story. So in February, I set up a working space in M1, which was going to bring the commencement of our transformation ways of working. It was going to be super exciting. Everyone's looking forward to it. White walls all the way around the walls of this building, and flexible seating desks. It was going to be huge. Got everyone in, showed them to it. We're all super excited. 2 weeks later, the Singapore government said, "Hey, everyone has to work from home," and that was it. And because we'd already started the commencement of our build, it was either park everything or we kept going. We kept going. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges that we faced. I think the other aspect in being a CDO is you quickly realize it's also about being a chief people officer. And I'm not talking HR matters. I'm talking about making sure that people are on the journey. So, I often say to folks, if transformation was about the technology, I could probably do it with about 10 people, and it'd get done in half the time. But transformation is about people and about customers. And therefore, you need to take it a lot more carefully and make sure that everyone's on that journey with you, rather than just sitting in the back of the bus and waiting until you get them there. So I think those are 2 key things. Always be aware of the environment in which you're trying to transform, and second is always recognize that as a chief digital officer, your job is much more than just looking at the technology. It's also looking at the impact and the engagement of the people around you as well.
Very important. We did get another question, Rajeev, for you this time, from the audience. And you shared about SME as an opportunity in context of India market. Can you help us understand the scale of the vision and opportunity and what it means for your team to deliver on that vision?
So if you see in India, I think there are more than 50 million SMEs we have. So the opportunity is great. And every small office, which is like every doctor, every lawyer, every chartered accountant, they need solution which is not only connectivity. So it's more than 50 million SMEs which we are targeting. It's a big opportunity. And as far as so from an IT point of view, if you see there are 2 things. The biggest impact I see is, there are 2 ways we deliver the solution, right? One is a static bundle. We have created a bundle which is very static in nature, and we are forcing we are insisting that customer should buy those bundles only. But I think that's not going to work, right? The way we have to work is more of a dynamic bundle, so that customer can create their own bundle in a real time, and we should be able to provision and we should be able to provide a discounting on the base of dynamic bundle. So I think creating dynamic bundle, provisioning them in real time, passing discount in real time is the challenge which we are trying to solve. How to support that use case is the challenge which we are trying to figure out, and we are solving that.
Great, thank you. Nathan, we did actually get a follow-up question on the Chief Digital Officer title. And the question is, should every telco have one? And the person has not heard of it before.
So the obvious answer is yes, but then that might sound like I'm just trying to make sure that I've got a job when I come back next week. But look, I think so. I guess it depends on if the telco has the ambition to truly become digital. I reflect on the context of an IT organization is not responsible for design. An IT organization is not responsible for product owners. IT organization is sometimes responsible for data, but not always. And I think what the digital office has allowed us to do as M1 is bring these parts together and make that the engine room of driving the digital change and the digital agenda in M1. And while I've been driving ways of working, I do that in partnership with HR. While I drive design, I do that in partnership with marketing. While I drive data, I do that in partnership with our data protection officer. So it is the engine room, but it helps us to bring all these parts together because there are a lot of interdependencies. So look, I think it's a great way to start driving that change vehicle for telcos. But ultimately, it's going to come down to what scope and scale of change do they want to realize. If it's just a technology piece and they're not looking to own their own design and their own analytics and drive or ways of working change with product owners, then maybe you don't need it. Maybe you can just still do it as IT. But I think if businesses are going to truly become digital, it requires a different organizational structure and therefore different thinking as well.
Great answer. Thank you, Nathan. Rajeev, one question. It's around talent, expectation of talent. Who, for those who are looking for work in that telco, what is the exciting thing for you that you can offer compared
Apart
to
from salary?
Yeah.
Apart from salary, you're saying?
Well,
I think it's a tricky question. I know it's a tricky question because retention of talent is difficult, and attracting talent is equally difficult, right? But one of the things which I think a telco can give, and which maybe as other type of a company may not give, is like you see the result when you do something, you see the result, right? When we have launched 4G, we take a pride in saying that there are 400 million customers in India which is working on our platform. That kind of satisfaction you may not get in maybe other if you're a part of a other company. I will not name any other company, but the sense of satisfaction which you get once your product go live is immense, and you see the result what you have done. So that's I think something which nobody else can provide, and that's the key passion which keep us going, right? And then telecom is such a fast changing industry that you learn every day. And it's not like you're working on one microservice throughout your life or on a small product module throughout your life. The kind of exposure, the kind of vastness you at least see in telco, in-house IT is I think, immense.
No, thank you,
These
Rajeev.
are the things which I think is very different.
That's good. Nathan, obviously you probably have the same problem, right? Attracting talent compared to the larger big boys, right? How do you do that for M1?
It's a constant battle. And I would say, Mo, that we're no longer even competing just with the technology giants. You're competing with everybody, because I don't know a single company that doesn't have digital in their agenda. Therefore, every CV where they can demonstrate that they've got digital skills or have worked in digital initiatives is suddenly becoming gold. So I would say we're no longer competing just with tech giants. It's competing with everybody. But I think where we're at is we have implemented all of our core systems. It is live. It is running. And we're now at the next step of evolution, which is sort of the ongoing part of transformation. And I think the exciting part there, a bit to Rajeev's comment, is you're always going to be working on new and different things. Where I think in a tech giant, you'll be one of many, many, many tech people. I think in a telco, you're working in one area, which is a new area that they're trying to get into. So for us, it represents new skills, new capabilities, and it allows our software engineers and our designers and others to become heroes as part of that evolution of the company. And something that I'd like to think that, as we really achieve that goal of being a digital business that provides telco services, they'll reflect on saying, hey, I was part of that shift. When you think about it in a tech giant, the answer is going to be, okay, this is how the setup is going to work. This is your role. And when you step back from that, say, okay, how do I measure my degree of change or impact I've had? It won't be as easy, right? Because you're contributing to a much larger scale environment. So I think people are looking for an impact and wanting to be part of something where they can visibly see the results to Rajeev's comment, I think telco is a great place to be.
I totally agree with you. I mean, telco connects people together, right? Without telco, nothing will work, right? So there's obviously we've probably changed topics from about cloud strategies to people, talent. Last question, we got a couple of minutes left, both. You guys have spent a lifetime in telecom. What capabilities are needed to succeed in the future? If we're trying to attract talent, you guys are a great example because you spent a lifetime with telecom operators.
So one of the things which I think at least I'm seeing nowadays quite often is there is a need of product manager in IT organization. So far we have seen product management role in a business organization, but if you want to succeed, we need people in IT organization with the product mindset. Definitely we need developers, but we need people who can think overall solution, who can relate business with the solution. So that role is something, if we start moving in IT space, it will help us in a long way. That's one area I think at least we have started looking for our product managers as a part of IT or system organization, and that's an area which is going to help in a long way. I think that's one thing which I think is needed.
Thank you.
I think to add to that, and actually, Rajeev, I call them these translators, right? It's the folks that can translate between the business and tech and vice versa. I think the other aspect I would share is very needed for the future is two elements of a need to unlearn and relearn, because what we know now, I guarantee you in 5 years, things are going to change. And, we can't sort of hold on to what we know, thinking this is the Bible and what it's going to be. And then the second aspect is a willingness to fail. Historically, telcos, you've got to get it right. If you get it wrong, you're in deep, deep trouble. And while you've got to minimize the impact of failure, I think there's a huge opportunity to learn through that failure and then create some really exciting outcomes for customers and partners in the business itself. But I think those two things are important: unlearn and relearn, and look at the ability to fail and empower those teams to do so.
That's great advice, Nathan. Thank you. Thank you, Rajeev. I think we come to the end of the session. I really appreciate your time today. So again, thank you.